You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Wednesday, July 31st. Training camp. It was day 7 of training camp today. There were a lot of people missing from today's training camp, but one of them was not Brandon Aiyuk. So he was there as in hold-in still. But there was a lot to be said about Brandon Aiyuk this morning before practice, which is why his presence at practice was such a big deal. But we'll get into all that here in a second. But first, Dezi, how are you doing today? I know we didn't see each other last week. That was kind of a crazy week for you. How's everything going with you?
Oh man. So guys, so my son is a javelin thrower. He's actually, pretty good. And he was competing at club championships like 2 weeks ago. And on his last throw, he winds it back and throws it. And as soon as he throws it, he grabs his elbow and he looked at me and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And so for those who don't know, javelin throwers have a high incidence of UCL tears. Does that ring a bell for anybody, for our 49er faithful? He actually tore his UCL. So he was supposed to compete in Texas, which is where you were going to be flying out. I was going to be flying out on the same day. We were supposed to fly out to Texas to the Junior Olympics, where he was slated to become an All-American there. He'd worked so hard for it. And so we're literally day before, trying to decide, are we going to let him throw or are we not going to let him throw? Because we didn't know it was torn at this point. So I'm fortunate enough and blessed enough to be able to order stuff on my own. So I went ahead and just ordered a stat MRI, thinking, it's just maybe a tendonitis, maybe he partially tore it. Even my husband, who's a physical therapist, was like wishy-washy. There was no massive swelling. There was no bruising. Long story short, he tore the hell out of his UCL. We just saw the orthopedic yesterday. Guys, he gets to have the Brock Purdy. So he tore it in a way where they can just anchor the portion of the ligament back down into the bone and then do the internal bracing so that he will have a low incidence of recurrence and he'll be throwing in 6 months. So we're so stoked. Wow. And so I'm going to be talking a lot about this through his recovery, just to share with you, because now I learned so much about this heading into it because of covering the 49ers. And so I was able to go in and ask the questions that I felt educated on because of Brock Purdy. So thanks, Brock Purdy. I appreciate you allowing me to learn from your experience. But we went to the Tampa Bay Rays doc. Shout out to Dr. Eaton. He's amazing. And he'll be having surgery next Friday. So I appreciate any prayers, positive vibes, whatever you guys want to bring our way to help my son recover. That'd be great.
Yeah, I felt so bad when you told me last week, Dezi, but you know what? It sounds like he's getting the best of the best in terms of, the doctor that will be performing this surgery. And does it give you some, I guess, optimism knowing how Brock Purdy was able to, kind of bounce back so quickly from this surgery? I mean, you said the recovery is going to be 6 months for your son, right? So yeah, that's not too bad, actually.
No, and he's heading into his junior year, which for those who don't know, that's a big recruiting year. And so that was kind of like, we're at the end of the club season. He was going to have 6 months to be able to condition, and this is just the best news possible. So we're stoked. I'm familiar with, Brock's recovery. A year ago, guys, this was the talk at the training camp last year, a year ago. We were like, how's his arm going to look? What's it going to look like? Is he going to be the same Brock Purdy? All these things. And so now, I have the utmost confidence in the procedure that he's about to have by the surgeon he's about to have. And again, thank God I'm a 49er fan for more reasons than one. But I'm definitely appreciative for knowing the story and knowing how the outcome is.
What are the chances, right? What are the chances? But yeah, I wish your son a quick recovery, Dezi, and yeah, keep us posted throughout his rehab process. Yeah, That's crazy, but glad you're back here today. And yeah, a year ago we were talking about Brock Purdy's recovery from his UCL tear. This year in training camp, we're talking about Brandon Aiyuk and Brock Purdy's interceptions and a number of different things, most of which are meaningless or will end up being meaningless once the season starts. But until then, we will talk about those things. And let's start off with Brandon Aiyuk. So the thing with Brandon Aiyuk that happened this morning is that there was a tweet from an X post from a certain insider, an anonymous NFL insider. His name is Pretty Ricky. He's been pretty accurate throughout free agency, and that's when he kind of emerged, was this off-season free agency. And so, like I said, his account has even been shut down a number of times, and he came back. So his theory is that all of the insiders from the networks hate him because he gets everything right and all this stuff. So anyway, his post from this morning said it was a meme, but basically it read, "They don't know I have a big trade bomb coming." All right. And that's all he posted this morning. The reason that I think a lot of people immediately went to Brandon Aiyuk or thought it was Brandon Aiyuk related is because there's only so many contract disputes happening right now. And the most heated or most public one of them all has been Brandon Aiyuk. And it's not the first time that we've heard Brandon Aiyuk and trade in the same sentence this offseason when it comes to certain reports. So a lot of people assumed that this would eventually be the news of Brandon Aiyuk being traded. So hours later, or an hour or two later, those of us who were going to training camp today, a lot of you guys were asking, have you seen Brandon Aiyuk? is he there? Have you spotted him? Because obviously, if Brandon Aiyuk is there, probably means he's not getting traded, or at least like that would be the perception from a lot of fans. Well, I can tell you that Brandon Aiyuk was at practice today, as he has been in camp, which is as a hold-in, right? Like he's been there in his street clothes, very very low key, but he was there. And I do have to share this as well because Brad of the SF Niners, shout out Brad, because he had an awesome video. I don't know how he caught this, but he caught video of Brandon Aiyuk, that's him in the black hoodie, dapping up John Lynch. And then Kyle Shanahan. And this just looks like a very animated, positive interaction between those two. And so, again, this came just an hour or two after that tweet from Pretty Ricky and people assuming that Brandon Aiyuk maybe would be getting traded. So this is crazy that happened in today's practice. And I also must say, Dezi, for context, and I don't know if I was just projecting my own feelings on the situation because of that, but like the first half of practice was very it was low energy. Something just didn't feel like something just felt afoot. Like not even just to fans. I think like there was just a weird vibe in the building, in the air. Right?
Steph, it's Wednesday.
It is Wacky Wednesday. It is Wacky Wednesday. Is it a full moon or something? There's just something off about today. So yes, it could just be wacky, but it could, I don't know. I just had a weird feeling watching the first half of today's practice. Like I said, the energy level for the players was low, and Brandon Aiyuk came out before the team period, so before they do 11 on 11 stuff. And so before that is when it was weird. After that, it kind of like leveled itself out, and the practice ended up being fine as far as energy. But comparatively to the other sessions, it was pretty low energy. So that's what I have to say about that. And Dezi, did you catch wind of the post from Pretty Ricky to begin with, or is this the first time you're hearing about it? Like, how did you feel about that?
This is the first time I'm hearing about it. Like, I was literally at the orthopedic yesterday, spent hours there booking surgery. So I've just been kind of out of the loop because I had to catch up with work and things that, from being off yesterday. But the thing that I want to ask you is, you're there, like, you have the finger on the pulse. You are able to read all the body language, all the things. Like, do you feel like maybe they saw the post and it was kind of like, maybe, and so it was kind of that, maybe that's why it was so low energy, because maybe some of the players were like, all right, is someone rolling out of here, today? Like, do you think that was it? Like, how did practice end yesterday heading into today? Like, what can you, like, put your finger or thoughts together on what you think?
Yeah, so that and that's why I say, like, maybe I'm just projecting what I felt. Maybe I was thinking like that's what was happening. But yeah, like the way I interpreted it or the way I was seeing it, the low energy, it kind of just felt like maybe they were talking amongst each other and just, hearing things. I don't know. That's the way it looked like. And there were other just weird things, and it could have just been coincidence in practice that I was like, okay, I haven't seen that before. Like, there were times, maybe once or twice, where the wide receivers were talking to Kyle Shanahan in like a very like tight huddle, and you think like that's not very strange, but like that would never happen normally in that time of practice. And so I was like, what is going on? Like, is he telling them about Brandon Aiyuk right now? Like, I don't I don't know. It felt weird, but again, I could just be projecting that. I'm speculating, but that's the feeling I got from practice today.
You're not feeling any weird vibes like practice yesterday, or like everything just seems to be copacetic?
Yeah, as far as yesterday's practice, it was like a normal day with normal energy, I thought. And today was definitely noticeably flatter compared to that. So.
And there's a number of injuries too. There's a lot of things happening in terms of just player availability. Like, how is that in the interactions of everybody? Like, I'm excited to ask you about the line. Like, I need to know what's happening with the offensive line. Trent Williams been holding out as well. Like, help us sister out, because during the draft, I was big on like, we need a lineman, and so we got Ricky, which is fine. I'm okay with that. But maybe I'm not okay knowing that we have a little situation happening on the right side and the left side. So share the news, share your thoughts.
Let's get into the injuries, because there were quite a few today, as you noted. And let me just make sure this is visible for everyone. So this is a long list right here. And this is not all of the injuries per se, but these are all the players who missed practice today, Wednesday, day 7 of training camp. And so there were some new players who hadn't missed practice before that missed today. And so we're unsure whether that's some kind of injury of some kind. So I just noted that as unknown, or it could have been a rest day for some guys. Usually, like, rest days are for older guys, like veteran, like Curtis Robinson, for example, didn't practice today. Javon Hargrave didn't practice. I mean, it's probably safe to say for those guys, it was probably more likely a rest day. And I think it's also important to note that tomorrow, Thursday, the 49ers don't practice. So it's an off day for them. And so it could just be, hey, like, I know you're kind of dealing with something. I know you've been able to practice, but, you're a little sore. So let's just keep you out today so you get like an extra day of rest. You get 2 days off and then come back Saturday and you're fresh. Maybe that's it. But let's go through the list here. So we have Aaron Banks, who left 49ers starting left guard, missed practice today. Right guard Spencer Burford already has been missing practice because he has a broken hand. Feliciano has been missing practice already because of a knee injury. And that one's been pretty vague as well for Feliciano. We don't know what exactly the knee injury is or like the severity of it. And then Jarrett Kingston, he is the 6th-round rookie for the team. So I have to imagine his is related to an injury as well, because he's not a veteran. I don't think he'd be getting rest. So as far as these are the offensive linemen. That's a pretty hefty list of offensive linemen that didn't practice today. And of course Trent Williams, who's been holding out, he hasn't been here. So a lot of guys missing for the offensive line. Any of these injuries, from what we know of, that I don't know, they're like I said, they're all pretty vague aside from the Burford one.
Yeah. I don't know. I did see somewhere they were trying to evaluate to see whether or not he is going to need surgery. So I don't know if you've gotten any additional information on that, if that's come out, whether they've made that decision or not. But that was what I was waiting on in terms of his injury.
Yeah, Kyle said that he was going to talk, Spencer Burford was going to be talking to another doctor yesterday. So I don't think we've gotten an update directly from Kyle Shanahan yet, though, as to whether they're going to move forward with surgery for Burford or not. So TBD until we hear from Kyle Shanahan again, most likely.
I think that'll be about 4 weeks plus or minus is the ballparky
for the broken hand. If he gets surgery or if he lets it heal on his own.
I think both, because I think you can still put him in a cast. I mean, we saw Jimmy Ward out there with a cast, so I think it's still possible, protecting it in the appropriate cast or splint at that point.
Yeah, I have to imagine we see defensive players, I don't want to say all the time, but more often, being able to work and still play with a cast on, because maybe you don't need your hand as much. I know for offensive linemen, needing that hand is pretty important to.
Yeah, it depends on where. So if it's like, what we call a boxer's fracture, which is a fracture here of the 5th metacarpal, you're going to be in a splint where it's kind of like this. So you still kind of have a little bit of, these 3 fingers can help, but I mean, again, it just depends on how thin we are with all these other injuries and how everything turns about as to whether you want to push it. But I still think, 6 weeks is the safest thing for that position. But I think if they really needed him on the field, they'll figure it out in around 4 weeks.
Okay, good to know on Spencer Burford. As far as defensive injuries, not too much on the defensive front. So like I said, I think, in fact, I don't think either of these are injuries. Probably more likely rest for Javon Hargrave and Curtis Robinson. I saw Hargrave on the field in street clothes, and he looked to be in a good mood, so I think it was just a rest day. Brandon Aiyuk, contract hold-in, we already mentioned he was there in street clothes, practice today. There is a plethora of offensive and in particular wide receiver injuries to track right now. Jawan Jennings missed practice today. Unsure if that had to do with, his an injury or if he was just getting a rest day. But I don't know. I hate to think that it could be an injury, but maybe it's not something serious. Like I said, it could just be the team kind of being smart, given that tomorrow is a day off for them. So just kind of getting a player extra rest that's maybe a little sore or something like that. So TBD on Jawan Jennings. And then Danny Gray. This one, I'm pretty confident is an injury because I saw Danny Gray in the first half of practice. He wasn't wearing pads. He had his full uniform on, no pads though. And he looked to be talking to a trainer on the side, off to the side. Everyone else was doing certain warm-ups and drills. And Danny Gray was talking to the trainer. It looked like he was trying to test something out, maybe like a leg injury of some sort. And ultimately, after, being out there and talking with him for some time, it looked like they both went to the weight room at some point. I didn't see him after that. He definitely wasn't part of the wide receivers that ended up practicing today. So Danny Gray, I think, is dealing with an injury. We don't know what that injury is, but it just seemed like a leg injury of some sort.
Okay, you broke up a little bit, so I couldn't hear what you said in terms of the interaction with the trainer. So it looks like it's a leg injury of some sort.
Yeah, when he was trying to test it out, it looked like it was leg related.
Okay, keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and that's a bummer because I actually thought Danny Gray's looked pretty good in practice. He was getting a lot of targets, and obviously we know his injury history since he's been in the league has kept him off the field. So hopefully that's not something serious. And then the hamstring injuries. We have to talk about this. So Tay Martin, Jacob Cowing, Isaac Garendo, all rookies dealing with hamstring injuries. And as we know, Isaac Garendo's probably the more severe out of the three. And Garendo has had a history of, pretty bad hamstring injuries in the past that have kept him out several weeks in college at Wisconsin. So that's not encouraging to see from Garendo, but there's a trend, right? It looks like of rookie offensive players that are dealing with hamstring injuries. We saw Ricky Pearsall have one early in camp. He came back, but what can you say about hamstrings and why we're seeing so much of them in 49ers practice and why they seem to be impacting the rookies more so than anything?
It could be just, the transition from college to the pros, right? You're trying to put on the best show every single day. And so maybe you're not doing all the appropriate things for recovery. Maybe you're not doing the full warm ups because you're just so amped to just get out there and go for it. So this is just a lot of time hamstring injuries are just not the proper warm ups and then not taking care of your body in terms of rest, electrolytes, stretching, all of those things. And sometimes it's heat. You're out there, you just press the wrong way, you turn the wrong way, and that's it. So it's hard to say, but it's obviously telling that it's the three rookies that are all dealing with this. One already has a history of it. So, for those who haven't heard me speak about this before, when you have a hamstring injury, you can have these micro tears in the muscle, which then heals with scar tissue. And scar tissue is not as pliable, stretchy. And so it can lend itself to becoming a recurrent injury because you kind of keep tearing in the area where that scar tissue has been laid down. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how these things are handled as they move forward. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. These are rookies. We know Kyle Shanahan doesn't really like to put rookies out there in season one. So, they can be filling their minds with plays and learning the books and the, that side of the game while they're recovering. And then just kind of, hopefully healing these hamstring injuries properly so that they can move forward in their growth in the NFL.
Yeah, hopefully it's a one and done kind of thing for these guys because we're excited to see those guys out there. And the final, player that was missing in today's practice, Logan Thomas, tight end, that could have been a rest day, but again, it could have very well been an injury as well. So we'll wait and see what the update is on all of those guys, and if they'll miss any other time when the team is back at practice on Friday. So obviously, offensive line, wide receivers were the group that was impacted most by injuries, and we're just overall thin today as far as depth goes. So that, I think, kind of, maybe impacted the way we saw things go in today's practice. Although I will say, no interceptions from any of the quarterbacks today. And there was one actual, last thing I wanted to point out about for my slides here, because, Brock Purdy obviously had a slew of interceptions that we know about. He had 3 one day, 4 another, none today, but he was on CanBR earlier today to do an interview, and he kind of was asked about this, and this is what he had to say about interceptions. He said, quote, "Right now is a time for us to go out and experiment, Can I fit it in this window on this hitch? Can I look off Fred or Flan or Devondre in a certain way and make that throw backside? In a game during the season, it comes down to protecting the ball every snap, every play. So you can't necessarily try those things out, but right now we can. My mindset is to protect the ball, but let's be aggressive. Let's try this out. Then you figure out if it can be part of your game or not for the season. End quote. This seems like a pretty good reason to me, Dezi. What do you think about Brock Purdy's interceptions and your concern level?
I have zero concerns. This is exactly the time that you start to do this thing. If you look at the backside of anything, any sport in the preseason, like you're just going to always have these things. You've got to iron out the kinks. You've got to make things smooth. It doesn't just happen, right? Everything from like, a Broadway show, like, yeah, they don't just come out on stage and magically that's what it looks like. You have to have rehearsal. Basketball, these Olympians that are playing right now, like this is not, it's taken years of dedication and honing their craft to be able to get to an Olympic level of competition. I mean, this is just part of the game. So I am not concerned at all. Brock Purdy is the guy. I stand behind him. I rock with Brock. I've been saying it since he came off the bench. And so I'm not worried at all. We have other concerns. Again,
what are those? What are those concerns to you, Dezi?
Oh gosh, it's the contracts, and I am. Yeah. You guys know this. I'm a huge fan of the silverback. I love me some Trent Williams, and it concerns me that he's wanting more money. And then what does that mean for Brandon Aiyuk, right? Where we're going to pay the gorilla, which we've got to. Like, sorry, BA,
yeah,
Mama Aiyuk. It's got to be Trent Williams. He's got to get his money. I really fear for Brock's health, right? Like you can't have the left side and the right side. I mean, it's looking a little rough right now for the offensive line. So I am concerned about that. We still don't know what our defense is going to look like. We've got great players. I'm not terribly concerned there, but it's new coaching, not just different maybe style that they may be coming out with. So, you got to try that out and see what that looks like. And it's one thing to try it out with your own offense. It's going to be another thing to try it out with these other teams. But I think, and these injuries we have, like there's just a lot more that I'm going to be worried about than Brock Purdy. Like literally he's one of the last things that I have to worry about.
Yeah, I really wasn't too worried about Purdy either. I think his plan for this training camp was to kind of figure out what he could get away with, right? I mean, we know his rookie season, like he didn't even get that many opportunities. You're scratching and clawing to make the roster. Okay, fine. You play a certain way to do that, by the way. You're probably not being super aggressive or over aggressive. And then, his second year, he's dealing with his UCL recovery and rehabbing that. So you practice a different way, right? You're trying to find out, can I get away with this from the standpoint of, zip and strength, right? So that's different. And then also there was not really a competition, but, he had to be kind of careful then too, because he wants to still prove to the team that, he could be that guy and he's healthy enough to be that guy and the starter. Now the reins are off. There's no other type of pressure or other distraction to Brock Purdy. And yes, he is absolutely right that this is the best time to be trying new things and seeing what he can do, what he can get away with here. I love this, actually. I love this answer. I love this frame of thinking. He's looking to improve his game this year. I don't know, Dezi, if you saw his article with Mike Silver. I only caught like some certain quotes of it because I don't subscribe to the Chronicle. But Purdy wants to dominate this year, right? And he was already a really good quarterback last year, but figuring out these little kinks and all that is what's going to take him to the next level. So
that and an O-line, Steph.
And an O-line, yeah. A healthy one, preferably.
Exactly.
Those are going to be the things that is just going to elevate his game. So I see no issue with him, trying some new things. Because why not?
And I'm here for it. I already got tickets to the Buffalo Bills game. Like, that's how dedicated I am. I am willing to sacrifice myself in whatever coldness that is coming to me as I, land in Buffalo to watch that game on an evening. It's like an 8:20 game. Like, it's ridiculous. My husband was like, "Are we doing this?" I was like, "Well, I'm doing this. I'm not sure if you're coming with me, but."
Well, hopefully it isn't too cold, but if it is, oh yeah, we're definitely gonna need some like footage from how that day goes.
I'll do some
and maybe you can jump on a table. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, we'll definitely do that. I'm gonna have my whole ski gear on. Like, it's gonna be a whole situation. I'll make sure I tweet, or what do you call it? X live or tweet live. I'll do a live tweet from there.
Awesome. Well, we'll wait for that once the season gets rolling. But yeah, as far as the offensive line, I know we're a little concerned about that. I would say, like, given that there were a number and a pretty high number of offensive linemen that were missing today, they didn't do that terribly. I definitely feel like I've seen them look worse in practice. In fact, last week, I think they looked a little worse. And so Jalen Moore, for what it's worth, filling it in at Trent's spot at left tackle with the first unit, he's looked better these last couple practices. He's won some reps against Leonard Floyd and Nick Bosa. So, I mean, that's good. That's some good experience for him. I mean, build a confidence too. So you like to see that. And Dominic Pooney.
I was going to add, that's what I was waiting for. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
He just looks the part already, and I haven't seen anything bad from him where I'm like, he's not standing out to me in the sense that, when you see an offensive lineman stand out to you, it's usually not a good thing. Like, it's better if you never notice an offensive lineman. And I'm not noticing Pooney. Yeah. I watch him and I pay attention to him. And when I do, he's usually winning his rep. He's holding his own. And I think that's all you can ask for right now. I mean, he's still just getting started here and getting these first team snaps at right guard. And I mean, I already feel like he's in a good position. If he keeps this up, he's in good position to, be competition for Spencer Burford even when Burford's healthy. So I think Pooney could start at some point this season.
Okay.
Based on what I've seen so far.
Have we had any looks at, like, how's the defense coming together? How's the coaching staff? What's Brandon Staley look like? Like,
Dezi, you don't even know. The defense looks great.
I can't wait.
Defense looks great, and they look like a unit again. Like, they look like all the units are married to each other and they know what they're doing. They're in sync, And one thing that was cool today is I feel like I saw more DB pressures. Malik Mustafa was in on a blitz. Nice. I saw Chase Lucas in on a blitz today as well. So those are cool little wrinkles I'm seeing so far. And, honestly, I don't feel too bad about the defensive line and the starting defensive line, right? Like, I feel like those guys have been pretty impressive so far, just like we've seen defensive lines be impressive in the past with this group. So, but now I think that's notable because there's so many new guys. So, but they're looking just as effective.
Now, have you seen any sightings of Huff and Greenlaw, and like who's been kind of subbing in for the Greenlaw's position? Like, what does all that look like? Because I'm pretty confident Greenlaw's not going to be back for maybe even half the season, if not longer. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So have I seen Huff around? Yes. He's often like, you catch glimpses of him when he comes out of the weight room every now and again, and sometimes he'll catch the team period and just kind of watch. So he's there, he's around. You see him, you can see him almost every day. You see him at least once. Greenlaw, he's a little harder to spot because he doesn't really come out of. I think he's always there, but he doesn't always come out of the weight room. But today I caught a glimpse of him. I almost got a video but he wasn't out that long. Like, he was out for a little bit and then he went back in. But he, Greenlaw looks like Greenlaw, from what I could see from my binoculars. So as far as who's taken over their spots right now, who's filling in for Hufanga, I think it's been a number of guys that have kind of mixed in there. I think Malik Mustafa's getting some opportunities, and he's looked good, so far, along with George Odom, is getting more looks just because he's more the veteran. And so there's a couple other guys as well that I wouldn't say they're taking Hufanga's spot, because Hufanga's first team, but Jalen Mahoney, for example, is an undrafted free agent. He's not a threat to take Hufanga's spot or fill in, but he's just someone I'm going to point out that he's looked pretty good, and I want him to make the practice squad, because almost every practice I've seen him make at least one play, and he's stood out to me. As far as for the linebackers, Devondre Campbell has been the guy that's lined up most next to Fred Warner. But also you see Flanagan Fowles and you see D Winters get mixed in as well. They kind of like rotate those guys in with 1 and 2s as well. So
very good. All right. So everything's been going well. You're enjoying your time out there. What's in store for the rest of the week?
Yeah, it's been going well. And before I get to what's in store for next week, you asked me about Brandon Staley and just like how that's looking. I think, the defense, Lenore is looking great. He seems to be like the most attached to Brandon Staley and just like soaking up, I think, whatever Brandon Staley is like teaching him. And they have a lot of one-on-one moments, where Brandon Staley's kind of giving him a hint for like hand placement and things he can do at the line with his receiver. And I think some of those things are probably already rubbing off on him, because he's been having such a great camp, and he's getting pass breakups, getting interceptions. So yeah, he's been, I would say he's far and away having the best camp of anyone right now for 49ers. Yeah. So that's been great to see. But as far as what I have going the rest of this week, I mean, it's been nonstop for me, but I'm looking forward to tomorrow having a day off since there is no camp tomorrow. I'll just be working my 9 to 5, so not really a day off, but like, yeah, it'll be less work for me, so that'll be good. And then, I mean, Friday, I don't know if I'm going to make that practice yet. I kind of don't want to, because I've made plans with some friends, so it would just make my life a little bit easier if I don't go to practice on Friday. But I'll be checking in like the rest of you on Twitter, on X, and seeing what the updates are, particularly all the injuries. I think I want to know some of these injuries, or some of these guys that missed today's practice. What was that about?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. I should be back practice Saturday, so I'll probably have a recap show or just video of some kind after that. So make sure you guys check that out.
All right. That sounds good, man. We appreciate you going out. We appreciate your insight, the dedication, all the things. So keep it going. Keep it going.
RJ, thank you so much for the super chat. He said, join late, but wanted to show my appreciation and keep up the good work. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And yeah, we'll continue with the updates through camp. And yeah, so make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And I would recommend hitting that notification bell so you know when I go live. And Dezi, this has been fun. It's good to see you again. Yes. Like I said, hopefully your son's feeling a little bit better, and hopefully he has a quick recovery from his injury.
Thank you. It's good news knowing he's going to have the Brock Purdy, so we're excited.
Brock Purdy. It's officially been coined the Brock Purdy.
100%.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching, tuning in. Audio listeners, leave a rating, leave a review. But for now, have a good rest of your Wednesday, folks. Peace.